We need the freedom to work wherever life takes us. And today, Ariel is in Tokyo, Nicole's on a plane, Drew is in a taxi, and you're trying to keep your project moving forward. Get it done with Google Drive for Work. Drive for Work comes with unlimited storage, so all your work is available, no running out of space. You can even upload 5 terabyte files, if you have a file that big. Drew shares a file to Ariel's inbox. She can preview it and send back ideas without any software. Nicole needs to update a Microsoft Word file from an external vendor, so she uses Office compatibility mode to edit directly on her phone. She could also edit Microsoft Office from any computer in her browser without additional software. Encryption keeps your files safe in Drive, and e-discovery, auditing, and controls make it easy for IT admins to manage. Like when Drew leaves his tablet in the taxi, your admin can simply wipe the confidential files from his device. Drew lost his tablet before he could share the final logo. The only other copy is on Nicole's computer at the office. But because Nicole uses the Drive desktop application, files on her computer are available anywhere Drive is installed, so she can share the file from her phone at the airport and keep the project moving forward. Google Drive. All your work, safe, available everywhere, and easy to share.
Plans, changes, dreams, we're in this together. 9 to 5, 5 to 9. Fresh starts, kick starts, restarts, and jump starts. Grab it, grip it, and go with it. New and improved. Scratch that. New and approved. Strategic plans, action plans, meeting plans, and seating plans. Looking for it? Yep. Found it. Flight delays, weather delays, distance delays, no delay. Supply, demand. Hack, create. Divide, conquer. R-D. Team, work.
I absolutely love food. I love talking to customers about the food that we're cooking. It's a stone-baked bread, prawn tiger raws. This is our truffle salami. Granny Smith apples for my favourite apple pies.
Woolworths is Australia's largest retailer. Communication in an organisation with 200,000 employees is really important.
How we actually work with those people and engage with those people is a very big challenge. You can't have effective communication when you're talking to a store. It really is that power of linking and connecting. The tools that we've got now in Google really help enable that. There's a real power in being able to start to personalise people.
Most of my day is sharing a lot of ideas that we have across the company.
Everybody can actually see now what is going on, not just in our store, but even across Australia.
All of our people have a tool that enables us to actually share ideas and engage with each other. We don't have a work system and a home system. We're encouraging that there is a community in a store, but can also link and collaborate outside of work as well. You're a person at work. You're not just selling a product. You're not just doing a process. You actually are you. And you've got your own uniqueness, and we want that. We want our passion for food in all of our people and show that work can be fun.
This is the official kickoff to Atmosphere Live. This is the biggest Google for Work event of the entire year. We have business leaders and headline makers from all of the corners of the world joining us to talk about work. Now, work, that's where we innovate, create, hack, hustle, build, and dream. Welcome. I'm Jill Bennett, and I'm joined by Chris Pennington.
Good morning, Jill. Very, very excited to be here at Atmosphere Live.
We are coming to you live from Sausalito, California, and you can see the famed Golden Gate Bridge off in the distance behind us. And we want to give a special shout out to all of those of you who are joining us from across the U.S. We also have people joining us from Latin America, Europe, the Middle East, as well as Africa. And I know a lot of you are hanging out after work hours to join us. We appreciate it. We will definitely make it worth your while. This is our first digital event that's on an interactive platform, so you can have a lot more chances to engage with us back and forth. And we're going to kick it off shortly with 4 keynote speakers. So we have Vivek Wadhwa, and he is a fellow at Stanford University. He is also a distinguished scholar at Singularity University. He's here to talk about transforming the way you work, and that's certainly a key element around at Google. And we have Claire Hughes Johnson from Google X, who will be talking about moonshots.
We'll also be hearing from Googlers Sundar and Urs, and they'll be talking about product development, the Internet of Things, and how you actually create that in the cloud. And that's really the whole point of today's event. It's
touching on all the different elements that we're going to be looking at in transforming the way you work with all different types of technologies that can not only help the company change, but also transform productivity within the office.
Yeah, the reason behind this event is bringing Google, everything that's good about Google that you use every single day, and bringing it to the workplace. Work is where we innovate. Work is where we actually come up with those creative new ideas. And the interesting thing is that a recent survey by Deloitte showed that only 15% of people thought they got better technology at work than they do at home. People are truly looking to work the way that they live. The consumerization of IT has gone way, way beyond bring your own device. It's actually about the barriers between enterprise computing and consumer computing really being broken down. And that's what today's event is all about. It is about bringing everything that's good about Google and bringing it to the workplace.
That's right. And we want you to not just hang out and watch, we want you to really engage with us. So send us those questions. We can send them and we can give them to all of the speakers for the custom sessions. And you can also send your questions directly to the Googlers because, first of all, they're all over the place. We're tripping over them. And they're the ones behind the curtains who are actually taking in your questions. So if you have some you want to send directly, that's fantastic. Also, jump onto that social visualizer. You can see what others are saying across the social media channels. And go ahead. Let them know what you're doing as well. let them know what you like as you're watching Atmosphere Live. We have a bevy of great things for you coming up here, and you can also watch it all on demand when we wrap up the sessions. But we want you here and now because this is when the good stuff is really starting.
Yeah. I actually wanted to take a moment and actually bring in one of our speakers today. We've got Eric Singleton from Chico's. Good morning, Eric. How are you doing?
Hey, Chris. How's it going?
Yeah. Not too bad. Not too bad. Come in a little bit closer.
Right,
Come in a little bit closer. No, don't be shy. Don't be shy.
I won't be shy.
So, one of the things that we're very, very keen to hear about today, and the sort of like, it's almost like the cliche question, but very, very important, is what are some of the biggest challenges that you're facing today in Chico's?
I think some of the biggest challenges is that the lines between digital and brick and mortar are clearly blurring. And one of the biggest challenges for us is to make sure that we are there with her from the time she wakes up till the time she goes to sleep at night in a non-invasive way, so that we're patterning after her lifestyle to be available to her for our products.
And does that lead into what you're talking about today?
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to be talking about some key elements on how we do that and how we bring that to her attention and enable that type of consumption.
Fantastic. Well, I'm really looking forward to your presentation today, so thank you very much indeed.
Thanks, Chris. You bet.
And another presenter we'll be hearing from today is Brent Hogue. He's from Briggs & Stratton. I want to bring Brent right over here. Thank you for joining us. Great to have you here.
Good morning.
Well, first off, what have you seen in the last couple of years as one of the major influencers on your strategy decisions?
Well, for us, the biggest change has been really the focus on the customer. So in our example in IT, for instance, we don't have any traditional IT folks anymore. What we do is we rely on our partners like Google to provide the technology, and our people focus on the customer and adding value through that technology.
I'd imagine that's pretty unique when you're even at a place like this having conversations when people hear that you don't have the technology people on staff.
It is a little different, but I think that's where the wave of the future is. So the technology works, and we're relying on our partners for the great technology, and then we put that in place and leverage it with our customers and make it differentiated for our business.
I wanted to touch on this format today. What do you think about doing this where we can have people from all the pockets of the world able to join in?
I love it. I love the virtual nature of Atmosphere Live because not only can everyone participate across the world, but we can participate using Google tools and virtually like we would in the workplace. I think it's awesome.
Brent, great to have you here. Thanks so much, and we'll see you later in one of the custom sessions. All right, now we have 4 concurrent sessions designed. They're really customized for each person, so they're relevant to 4 different lines of business because we want that CMO out there to be able to jump in to the sales and marketing session, and we want the CIO to be able to join in on the IT session. We also have HR and products, so we're covering a lot of ground here. And I wanted to highlight a couple of the things that you'll expect to hear from these sessions. First off, in sales and marketing, we're going to be talking with Jeff McConaughey from Trulia, and he's going to talk about how he made the real estate website really sticky, and he did a number of things, including some customization of Google Maps. And we also have Nathan Pettyjohn from Aisle 411. Now, this may really transform the way we shop in the future because he talks about how you can take your cell phone when you're in your car and you may use your cell phone map to actually get to a store location. What you can do is hang on to that cell phone once you walked into the store because it will give you the layout of the store. So you can say, okay, now I know I want that product, and that product is in aisle 14. So it could certainly speed up a lot of those trips when you're running in late at night trying to grab something quickly. We have Randy Clods from US Cellular. He's going to be talking about using BigQuery to do what we call compressed time to insight. So he'll explain what that means. And then we have Ben Dar from Thrillist Media Group. He's interesting because he talks a lot about what the Google technology is doing for the overall company, but also how it's making everyone much more productive. And they're doing everything from doing Google apps that can help you determine who's in a conference room at what time, because that can always be the big headache when you're running around the office trying to find the conference room. And also when you can do little things like Google Hangouts and get rid of some of those email chains.
So we have over 21,000 people registered for this event, which I think is an amazing demonstration of how people are interested. And we really encourage you to spend time in the breakout sessions as well. And as Jill was saying, we move on, and we've already seen Eric briefly, and he's going to be talking about how Chico's dumped an old email system and is adopting Hangouts to be the central core of everything they do around about collaboration. And it actually won him the 2014 CIO of the Year award. And we're also talking about with HP about how they're putting glass to work in the largest print customers. In the HR session, which I think is going to be an incredibly important one, it's how do you use all this technology to empower employees? How do you make them better and more productive? And we'll hear from Kim Thompson from Whirlpool, as well as Bhupesh Arora from Avery Dennison, and Melissa Karp actually at Google.
Okay, and also Brent, who you just heard from earlier from Briggs & Stratton, he will be here talking about how the Google Cloud really helped the company break into the consumer market, and that's in the IT session, as well as Scott Hendrick from Scott Miracle-Gro. He'll be talking about how the company uses Drive for work and the App Engine to transform sales. But we do have some great speakers ahead. As you can tell, we really lucked out with a great roster of talent. So remember to engage with us. Send us those questions, interact, get on that social visualizer, and really engage and find out what other people are saying across the social media channel. And remember, we're going to wrap it up all here as well and have it on demand after these custom sessions. This is Atmosphere Live. This is the best of Google for Work. We are back. This is Atmosphere Live, and not only is it the biggest Google for Work event of the entire year, but it is also our first digital event on an interactive platform, so you can really engage with us throughout the sessions. Welcome, I'm Jill Bennett, and I am joined by Chris Pennington.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to this very exciting day. Really looking forward to it. And I really want to encourage people to really use this as an opportunity to learn from game changers. We have a lot of really good speakers on the entire event. And think of it as an opportunity to take ideas back to your teams, back to your work, back to your lives. And we really want it to be a very interactive event, as Jill said. And so keep that feedback coming.
Yeah, it's really all about Google for Work. I mean, work is the place where we do everything from innovate to create and hack and build and hustle and build in all of these different things. And that's what we're going to be focused on today. And in fact, we're going to bring in some of the customers who are going to be talking, and you're going to be hearing from them later in the custom sessions.
Work used to be a place that you went. It was somewhere where you turned up at 9 and maybe you clocked up at 5:30. And that is no longer the reality of everything we do around work. Work is something that you do. So work is actually, to some degree, sort of who you are. So this is a very, very important part of life. And it's why Google is spending so much effort in bringing everything that's cool about Google to the workplace.
And we have some great stories, everything from Jeff McConaughey from Trulia, who talks about how they customized some Google Maps to actually bring more users into the website. And also, you want to be talking with someone right now.
Yes, I have somebody that we're really good. I'd like to invite in Bryson from the Weather Channel. Good morning, Bryson. How are you?
I'm well. Good morning.
Good morning. So one of the things I think that the Weather Channel has done, is really enhanced technology to bring greater accuracy and a lot more diversity to the weather. Yep. What do you think is the vision? What's the vision for the Weather Channel moving forward?
It's a phenomenal journey. When you think about weather and you think about your own life and you think about how weather impacts your day, we didn't know that we were going to get this great shot here this morning. We thought that the bridge would be covered in fog, and that was a last-minute change, and that's weather. And so weather impacts about 35% of the world's GDP every day. Decisions every day by billions of people around the world are impacted by weather. And so we want to be, and we're on the journey to be, the world's big data weather platform that can help them make better decisions for themselves and their own life, but also help businesses make better decisions around how they're spending their time, their capital, and their investments to engage with those customers.
That's fantastic. I really appreciate it. So thank you for coming today. We really appreciate your time, and I hope you enjoy the event as well. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
And also, I want to mention that we really want you to interact with us. So go on the social visualizer. Be sure you can see what everyone's seeing across all of the different social media channels. And also, you can engage as well. When you like something that you see on Atmosphere Live, be sure that you're posting it, you're talking about it, you're getting it out there. And remember, you can send in those questions. You can send them not only for the speakers of the custom sessions, but also for the Googlers, because we have them all over the place. We're tripping over them at all times, and they are the ones who are actually taking in and answering these questions and getting them to the speakers. So be sure you can send some directly to them as well. And I also want to mention that we want to have you very engaged with these different custom sessions. We have 4 breakout sessions that are really designed to be relevant to youth. There are 4 different lines of business. We have everything from IT to HR to sales and marketing, as well as products.
Google for Work is about enhancing everything that you do. And doing it at work, it helps you innovate, it helps you create. And so this is what this event is all about. I think the event itself is creative. I think the event itself is innovative. It's an example of what's possible. And so we're really excited to have so many people joining us today, and hopefully later on with the ability to download it. And so really, I do encourage you to sort of like get as much as you can out of the breakout sessions as well as the general sessions. I think it'll be a very useful day, and we're very excited to have, as I said earlier on, over 21,000 people registered for this event.
And we really have that game-changing technology that you want to stay tuned for, something that you can adapt into your own workplace. And just for one example, we have Nathan Pettyjohn from Aisle 411, who's going to be talking about how you can get into your car with your cell phone, and it can lead you, say, to a particular store with the Google Maps. And then you can take that cell phone out of the car and you can walk into the store, and you'll actually get the entire layout of the store on your cell phone. So you can walk through the aisles and you can say, okay, I know I need to be in aisle 14. It is the bottom lower shelf, which is really helpful. And that was after he had a frustrating time at let's just say, a very large big box retailer where it took him 10 minutes to find a surge protector. So that's how some of these things end up becoming developed. And we also have another one that's interesting, that if you're a big real estate junkie, a lot of us are out there. Even after we buy a house, we still keep looking for a house. And I think I'm guilty of that as well. Jeff McConaughey from Trulia talks about this new Android watch and app. So if you can actually wear it, and if you're walking around your neighborhood, it will pop up with a house for sale right in your neighborhood. So it might be dangerous for me, but.
And I think that actually, it's a fantastic point about nobody, I think, argues anymore that mobile first is an actually sort of like cornerstone of everything we do in our lives. I think everybody is used to carrying around a smartphone. And I think it's very exciting where that is going to take us, because it's not only about being empowered, but it's about everything that device knows about you and can help you with your life.
And it's a wonderful location that we are in here, but we also have some terrific speakers who will all be inside. And so we want you to stay with us throughout. And one of the things is we are actually going to take all of these sessions and put it on demand after we wrap up today. But you really want to stay here and now, because this is when we have all of the game-changing technology. This is Atmosphere Live. This is the best of Google for Work.
All right, I want to welcome our additional 20,000 viewers from the live stream. Welcome this morning to Think Cloud for 2014. The topics that we're going to cover this morning, you see them back there behind me. We're going to hear from a variety of experts on everything from how 10x thinking can impact the workplace to what's the next generation of cloud looking like, what's the architecture behind it, the intent behind it, and moonshot thinking, and how you introduce innovative thinking into product development and release. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce to you our first speaker, Mr. Vivek Wadhwa. He's a fellow at Stanford University and a distinguished fellow at Singularity, and we want to thank him for telling us a little bit about how 10x thinking will empower employees in the workplace.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thanks for that.
I'm sure all of you have learned about Clay Christensen's theories of disruptive innovation, how the new entrants come from the lower end of the marketplace and then scale up and disrupt. I've got news for you. Christensen's theories have been disrupted. They're out of date. The new entrants no longer come from the lower end of your market. They come out of nowhere. As Peter Diamandis says, it's two kids in a garage basically building an exponential technology that come and disrupt major industries. This is what's happening. This is the difference between linear thinking and exponential thinking. Let me explain to you what I mean by that. All of us are human beings. We think linearly. If I ask you how far 30 steps is, all of you can take a guess. 30 steps is roughly 30 meters. If I ask you what 30 exponential steps is, I doubt most of you will have a clue. 30 exponential steps is 26 times around the planet, 1 billion meters. That's how technology is advancing. Ray Kurzweil explained it best. What he said was that whenever a technology becomes an information technology, it goes exponential. And that is what is happening with artificial intelligence, with sensors, robotics, medicine, 3D printing, synthetic biology, and a whole host of different types of technologies. They're going exponential. And those are the ones that are going to hit your businesses out of nowhere and disrupt your companies before you know it. We don't have decades anymore. We have years before we start seeing large-scale disruption. And you can't pick up innovator's dilemma anymore and think that you've got the solution. It don't work, to put it very simply. Let's start with good old medicine to show you what's happening on that. I'm sure all of you are aware right now that we have an encyclopedia of medical knowledge available on the internet. I don't think you understand the magnitude of this encyclopedia. You have more knowledge available to you than the leading scientists, the physicians, researchers had as recently as 15 or 20 years ago. You get up-to-the-date knowledge as it happens. Any advance anywhere in the world, and you read about it immediately. This is a type of information that very few people had ever before. It's readily available to you for free. As well, your smartphones have now become medical devices. You can buy glucose meter add-ons for your phones. I have one from AliveCore, which is a cardiologist, which basically does EKGs. This device is commercially available right now for $200. Indeed, there are hundreds of devices already on the marketplace. And with Apple now announcing the Health Kit and the Health Platform and their watch, I'm sure Google is going to be in the game before you know it as well. I can't imagine our friends being left behind. And if Google gets into it, Microsoft is going to get into it, everyone is going to get into it. We will have all sorts of new medical devices that we haven't even imagined yet readily available to us. And soon we'll have sensor devices that monitor our internals. You remember that movie Fantastic Voyage, in which we shrunk those human beings and put them in a capsule and they went inside the body? Forget about the shrunken human beings. I'm not predicting that'll ever happen. But the capsules are already commercially available. The smart pills are commercially available. Imagine how we can start using them, and they can start going inside our body and now adding sensor data to it. Imagine being able to deliver medications to specific organs of your body, specific regions of your body. Right now, if we get sick, what do? We go to the doctor, and he or she prescribes antibiotics. It poisons the entire body. Why not deliver precise medications to where it's needed? This is not very far away. The beauty of sensors is that they provide continuous health data. Right now, when we get sick, we go to the doctor, and the doctor takes a few medical tests. It's a one-off thing. And he or she takes notes that not even he can understand or she can understand, right? Imagine now having data on you 24/7. As you wake, as you sleep, as you shower, as you go to the bathroom, as you brush, all of these data now are being uploaded to the cloud, and having AIs monitoring that data and warning you when something is about to go wrong. Or when you're about to have that extra piece of cheesecake, you get an SMS, abort, abort, abort. Just don't do it. This is where we're headed. And that's just the beginning. There's also the human genome. About 13 years ago, we read front page coverage of Craig Venter beating the US government to the punch in sequencing the human genome. The government spent roughly $3 billion on it. Venter spent about $100 million and beat the government to the punch using the government's own data. Guess what that costs today? $1,000. The significance of this is it will become software. You folks are largely in the IT business. You manipulate software to understand commercial data. Imagine now being able to take the data from sensors and from the genome and the revolutions that become possible. This is where we're headed. This is a chart from Eric Green, who works for the US government in the Genomics Project. He forecasts that in the 2020s, we will be prescribing medications based on the human genome. Forget about delivering medication to an organ or a region of the body. Imagine being able to prescribe medications based on individuals. Right now, it's one size fits all, yet we're different. Two of us can have the same parents, yet we look and behave completely differently. Our software is different. This is the era we're headed into. We'll have personalized medications based on data. So we take our genetic profile, we take our microbiome, which is the ecosystem within us, we take our medical history, and then information about lifestyle and habits. Because even though we may have, quote, healthy DNA or be less prone to disease, we could screw it up by having an awful lifestyle and doing really dumb things. Imagine taking all of these data now and the next generation of IT systems focusing on human health. This is where we're headed, very rapidly. And soon, robotic surgeons. Already Intuitive Surgical markets a semi-autonomous robotic surgery kit by which the doctor can be here, the patient can be over there, and it does very precise, accurate surgery. Now, the question I ask you is, why do we need human beings? When, as of last year, computer vision became greater than human vision. When computers don't drink, they don't get distracted, they don't have fights with their spouses, they don't come in grumpy in the morning to operate on their patients. Give it 15 or 20 years, and I would trust an AI-based robotic surgeon to operate on me rather than a human being any day. This is where we're headed, and it's not more than 15 or 20 years away. That's the time frame in which these major advances will happen. In that time frame, also expect, remember Steve Austin and the $6 Million Man? I think Steve Austin will cost about $6,000, not $6 million. And we will have commercial prototypes of Austin in the 2025 to 2030 time frame. In fact, if you go to Richmond, which is not very far from here, go to visit Exobionics, they'll demo to you their exoskeletons. That beautiful woman over there is Amanda Boxtel. She had a skiing accident 15 or 20 years ago. She couldn't walk. You see her walking around right now with an exoskeleton built by those folks. We will have enhancements to our bodies, which will be the next big thing in sports. How can you tell if someone is enhanced? Right now, we worry about drugs. Imagine worrying about enhancements, superhuman vision, superhuman hearing, other types of physical enhancements to our bodies. This is in the 2025 to 2030 time frame, we're going to be there. And then robots will also be doing the jobs of clerks, pharmacists, surgeons, as I talked about. You'll have robots doing a lot of the work that human beings do. And this is not in the 2025 to 2030 time frame. This is in the 2015 to 2020 time frame. This is a roadmap by DARPA on the robotic realities. Already we're building humanoid, android-like devices. Do you think it's a coincidence that Google renamed their operating system Android and is buying up every robotic manufacturer in the world? But the fact is that we're now headed into this era of androids, like what we saw in science fiction. Already, you can buy robots that can do agriculture or manufacturing in the $20,000 to $30,000 time frame. These robots work 24/7. They don't complain. They don't join labor unions. They don't commit suicide. They do the same task over and over again without complaint. And they don't cost much. As of this year, believe it or not, it is cheaper to manufacture in the United States than it is in China. Think about what I just said. It is cheaper to manufacture in the USA than China. Manufacturing to China has stalled. It's trickling back right now. The trickle will become a flood over the next 5 to 10 years because we will have now the value chains, the supply chains being moved back to the United States and Europe. And then it won't make sense to ship goods all the way to the Far East to have slave labor manufacture goods and then to have it shipped back. We won't need those human beings anymore. This is in this decade. Not science fiction, not 50 years from now, this decade. And guess who's building robots? It isn't just the geniuses at Google and the robotic manufacturers. It's kids who are building it. In fact, if you want to inspire your children to get into STEM, I highly recommend that you get them to attend FIRST Robotics. They have FIRST Robotics all over the country. When we were young, we would do mechano-kits and erector sets, and this is how our parents encouraged us to study engineering. Our kids can be building robots Don't be surprised if one of our children ends up building Rosie from the Jetsons. I used to dream about Rosie when I was young because I used to make a mess, and my dream was that I have Rosie cleaning up after me so I wouldn't have to worry. And I expected that by the time I was I was older, I'd have a Rosie robot. But it never came because the computing power required to do voice recognition, face recognition, and to do sophisticated movements, and the sensors required would have cost millions of dollars. They would have required crazy supercomputers the size of this room. And guess what? Your smartphones have more computing power than the Cray supercomputers did. In fact, they have multiples of the computing power of the early Cray supercomputers. And what do our phones do? They sit in our pockets waiting for us to occasionally check email or to tweet every now and then, or maybe we make some phone calls, God forbid. This is a supercomputer we carry in our pockets. Imagine now adding it to robots and what you can build. Your kids will build it. And then look at printing. You remember the good old days of typesetting? Most of the people in this room aren't the young kids from Silicon Valley. They're middle-aged. So I'm sure you remember when we used to have to print things, you would have to worry about typesetting costs. Ask the young kids in Silicon Valley what typesetting is, and they'll give you a blank stare. They have no clue what typesetting is. But that's what printing used to require, because printing was complex. Even today, academic papers, if you see them, you note that they have all the charts at the end. Why don't they have the charts embedded within the text? Because typesetting was complex and difficult. So academics run behind the times. My friends in academia still do things the old-fashioned way, but we've gotten beyond it. And now we have 3D printing. I mean, it's just amazing. All of this is 3D printed. It's amazing what 3D printing makes possible. I'm sure you've all seen 3D printers. You can just Google it and watch them online. But look at this 3D printed car. Imagine being able to custom order your own designed automobiles, which drive themselves. Which, I don't know if Google is doing this project or not, but I'd love to see them become transformers and transform into Rosie the robot when you get back home. The beauty of 3D printing is that complexity is free. You can create objects and shapes and designs which we couldn't possibly do in a manual fashion. This is the beauty of 3D printing, and it's available to us today for practically nothing. Nanotechnology. Nanotechnology we've been hearing about for 10 or 20 years. It's still science fiction. But nanomaterials are not. The beauty of nanomaterials is that they can make vitamins and drugs easily absorbed. They can make paints brighter, longer lasting, make metals harder. I mean, you're already seeing nanomaterials now showing up in our car paint, in our baseball bats, in our bicycles. Nanomaterials are being used everywhere. And the most amazing nanomaterial of all is graphene. I don't have time to give you a lecture on graphene, but just Google it and understand the applications of graphene. It is amazing. It's stronger than any other material known to mankind. And it conducts heat and electricity better than anything else. Just watch to see how we have graphene in our chips, in our computer chips, and graphene everywhere. And then I talked about reading DNA. Guess what? We can also write DNA. Imagine being able to program new organisms, just like you write software, being able to design new types of organisms which make plants generate more nitrates, which clean up carbon dioxide, which do all these amazing things. Now, for most of you, this is too far advanced. Guess who's doing it? Children are. Just like I talked about FIRST Robotics, there's an iGEM contest in which kids are building the most amazing devices you can possibly imagine. This is another great thing to get your children into, is doing synthetic biology experiments. Now, I talked about all the disruption, but I see disruption as opportunity, because wherever you're going to have change, you have the opportunity to create major new advances and to build new industries. And this is what's going to happen. With manufacturing, I talked about robotic manufacturing, but in the 2020s, what I expect is that the robots will go on strike with placards saying, "Stop the 3D printers, they're taking our jobs away." Because this is the rough roadmap to 3D printing. Already we can print personalized consumer goods. We're going to get into start doing most small-scale printing and artistic work using 3D printers. Already a lot of the design work for large companies is being done. All the prototypes are being built using 3D printers. In the next decade, we're going to be doing 3D printing virtually everything, including buildings, including the electronics in our smartphones. Just imagine a world of Star Trek, where you had the replicator producing small-scale and large-scale objects. This is a near certainty. This is not science fiction. I mean, even this chart is put together by Carl Bass, the CEO of Autodesk. And Carl is quite conservative. We're headed there, whether you believe it or not. Education, my favorite topic. It used to be that education was one-to-one. We learned from our teachers, from our preachers, from our friends. And then came the Industrial Revolution in schools. And you know, in schools, when we were young, if we shared knowledge, it was called cheating. For our kids, it's called collaboration. That's many to many. And now you have MOOCs. To me, MOOCs are primitive. It's like the early days of TV. When I see this stuff, and you know, Salman Khan is wonderful, but when I watch his videos, I'm saying, what is this? This is primitive. This is like the early days of TV. Where's the ambition? Where's the vision? Where's the world-changing technology? Soon, we're going back to the era of one-to-one instruction with AI-based tutors, digital tutors, which monitor our learning and adapt the lessons to our needs. They remember where we are, they remember how we learn, and they teach us in the method that's most appropriate to us. IT services, which is near and dear to many of your hearts. The mouse, it will soon be dead. I don't know why we still have this primitive creature on our sophisticated devices. Gesture-based recognition is going to be mainstream in the next few years, and we're going to be reprogramming our systems. And then also outsourcing. You remember that evil word about outsourcing? It's now become crowdsourcing. And then work has become micro-work. We're no longer sending away major IT systems. We're now talking about small tasks and being able to outsource those to the appropriate people. I just did something pretty radical. I'm one of the ones, if you Google my name and so the articles I write, go to my website, wadwa.com, you'll see that I'm very passionate about the lack of women in Silicon Valley. I've been brutal. I've been beating the crap out of the Silicon Valley mafia, the boys club, about the fact it leaves out women, it leaves out African Americans, and it leaves out Latinos. Inexcusable. I wanted to write a book about women in tech, but I'm a guy. What's a guy doing telling women what to do? So I decided to crowd create it. I crowdfunded it, and I crowd created it. Within weeks, I had years of research done for me. And I was able to create a fabulous book, which is now commercially available. Soon, we're going to have, already you've seen how tablets have taken over. My prediction that by the end of this decade, we have 3 billion new devices, which are smartphones. Smartphones are going to eclipse tablets. We will have billions of these. We're going to have another a slide, another line there, which is even more linear. I'm sorry, more exponential. Apps eating software, you know about this stuff. Storage is becoming free and moving to the cloud. Bottom line is that trillion-dollar opportunities happen at the intersection of exponential technologies. Disruptions are happening everywhere you look. Entrepreneurs can do what only big governments and research labs could do before. Big companies versus startups, you're all about protecting your market, processes, existing markets, and limiting risk. In the world we are in Silicon Valley, it's all about disruption, wiping out the big players, changing the world, and so on. What you need to do is you need to start looking at the big picture and learning how to identify exponentials. Look for what's coming outside your industry, and look for where the disruptive change will be. You need to essentially become entrepreneurs. Now, you'll ask that entrepreneurs are these young kids in Silicon Valley that we read about. False. Don't buy this nonsense. Entrepreneurs, the average age of a Silicon Valley entrepreneur is 39. It is not 21 or 19, as you will read in the press. They tend to be old people like us, my friends. They're not college dropouts either. Don't believe this nonsense about college dropouts ruling. They do not. The majority of successful entrepreneurs are highly educated. Education counts, not necessarily Ivy Leagues. I mean, I was at Harvard, Stanford, Duke at the same time, and when I would put these slides up, I know my colleagues would cringe because I was saying that elite education doesn't provide you a real advantage. That's what the research shows, that you can be from any college and be a successful entrepreneur. Entrepreneurs tend to be highly experienced. Experience gives you a big advantage in entrepreneurship. There's no doubt about it. That experience, age, maturity are big advantages. This is something all of you have. All of you are experienced. You're the entrepreneurs. And people weren't necessarily born entrepreneurs. Bottom line is that it isn't some kid out of school that's going to save your company. It's you who has to do it. You have to learn to be entrepreneurs. You have to change the world. You have to behave like these kids in Silicon Valley that you read about disrupting, changing, thinking big, and looking outside your industry for solutions. That's where the solutions are going. That's how you're going to save your companies. You have to disrupt yourselves. Look at Steve Jobs, even Facebook. Why do you think Zuckerberg bought Instagram and spent $1 gazillion buying WhatsApp? Because he worried about these newcomers disrupting his industry. So he started buying everything he could. This is the type of thing that you have to do. Peter Diamandis has done a lot of work on it, and he talks about the exponential technologies and then the tools that you have in large organizations to take advantage of these advances. Everything from crowdfunding to taking advantage of micro work and ideation and so on. And there are many techniques that you can use. On top of that, you can also do Google-style moonshots. I know they'll be talking a lot about it during the day, but that is the type of thinking that you need to bring into your corporations, that you need to be able to think outside the box, be the disruptors. Don't wait for some kid to come and save the day for you. Do it yourself. Look outside your industry. Look at everything that might happen to you. Look at the trends in computing. You have to really, with exponential technologies, you have to look forward at the curve. For example, if you're designing new systems today, you have to assume that gesture, voice, even embedded, like Google Glass embedded displays are going to be the future. You have to assume computing will advance even more rapidly. You have to assume that change will happen and you'll have billions of smartphones. Now design your systems. Look forward, think outside the box, and disrupt yourselves. That's what you need to do. You can read more on my website, wadwa.com. Follow me on Twitter. But this is what I've been researching and writing about. And I'm convinced that this is the most innovative decade in human history, when we're going to use technologies to solve humanity's grand challenges, to disrupt industries, and to make the world a better place. So save your own companies by learning all this stuff. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Vivek. Wow. Everybody get that? Got all the notes? That was spectacular. When you look at the way people are thinking orthogonally, outside the box, whatever you want to call it, and then you realize on a day-to-day basis we're often constrained perhaps by our own efforts to just get everything done that we're supposed to get done. It really is an interesting message to free yourself from those constraints and see what you can be doing to make a big difference, not only for where we are today, but where you ultimately want to help guide your companies to be. So we had a lot of big thoughts just now, a lot of encouragement for big thoughts. How do we take those big thoughts and land them as real ideas? And for that, we're going to hear from Claire Hughes-Johnson, who is the leader of our Google self-driving cars effort, which I know, has anybody heard of that, by the way? Anybody heard of that at all? No? No hands? Nothing? How about out there in the ethersphere? So we're going to hear from Claire this morning. So we're thrilled to welcome Claire Hughes-Johnson.
Thanks, Carl.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
Oh, I will need that. Hello, good morning, everybody, and everybody on the live stream. I'm going to pretend you're not there because that sounds like a lot of people. So I'm going to talk to you about a couple of things today. So the main one is sort of Google X, largely in how we think about innovation at Google and how it works, but also, as alluded to by Carl, my favorite Google X project, which is self-driving cars. I've actually been with Google for over 10 years, and this event is very near and dear to my heart because my early days at Google were about scaling Gmail and launching Google Apps. So it's amazing to see where it is today from where we were when schools were just calling us and saying, can we have this, please? So I'm thrilled to be here. I joined Google X about a year ago, and I want to be clear that although I am leading parts of the self-driving cars project, the engineers who've been working on it have been working on it for a long time, and I'll talk about what it takes to get that kind of innovation to market. So Google X largely, I think Vivek introduced this well, is really about thinking about disruption in an entirely different way and thinking quite radically about the future, and then seeing if actually we can make that future real in a nearer term time frame than people might have assumed. So how do we define our moonshots? One is we think about a huge problem. One of the projects I'll talk briefly about is Project Loon, which is addressing the fact that 2/3 of the world doesn't have access to the internet. Something we are all taking for granted and live streaming today is really not a reality for a lot of people on the planet, and that is impacting their opportunities. So that's a huge problem. It's something that requires a radical solution. And that radical solution most likely will also require breakthrough technology. So first we think about the solutions that may be possible in the problem, and then we really work on that technology and experiment and test to see if we can make it real. What I'm going to just share here is a quick video that sets the stage for how we think about moonshots. And one of the things I think about for Google is, we didn't invent search, but Larry and Sergey really turned it on its head and thought about the problem quite differently. And so that's the aim of this video, is to introduce moonshot thinking. One of the people in the video is a former colleague of mine until recently, who's now the CTO of the United States. So keep an eye out for Megan Smith, who is definitely a woman in technology. So let's roll the moonshot video.
The actual moonshot is wonderful, inspirational, poetic, beautiful, involved great technical challenges, genuine heroism. It brought the world together. But think about the Polynesian islander on the dugout canoe, deciding one day they were going to go that way. No one had ever been that way before. No one even knew if there was anything that way before. It was amazing, and it changed the world.
People can set their minds to magical, seemingly impossible ideas, and then through science and technology bring them to reality. And that then sets other people on fire, that other things that look impossible might be accomplishable.
Many years ago, the great British explorer George Mallory, who was to die on Mount Everest, was asked why did he want to climb it. He said, because it is there.
Everyone else in the world is working on that next 10%. If you can be the one that delivers that 10 times improvement, you have a chance to really change things.
If you want cars to run at 50 miles per gallon, fine, you can retool your car a little bit. But if I tell you it has to run on a gallon of gas for 500 miles, you have to start over.
You need a lot of courage in this work, and you need a lot of persistence. Even if you don't really 100% believe it's possible, like you might think this might be possible, have the courage to try. That's how the greatest things have happened.
You don't spend your time being bothered that you can't teleport from here to Japan, because there's a part of you that thinks it's impossible. Moonshot thinking is choosing to be bothered by that.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
Humanity's progress has been a series of amazing, audacious things, from the very small and personal up to the great, big, and grand. And we are a species of moonshots. And to me, that's like the really amazing, poetic, and inspirational thing.
When you find your passion, you're unstoppable. You can make amazing things happen. It's been true through all of history.
When Kennedy said that we would put a man on the moon, it's about the fact that he said, we don't know how to do this yet, and we're gonna do it anyway. And that sends chills up everybody's spine. Because if that happens, what couldn't we do?
So that's really our kind of origin video. When we talk about moonshots, we're literally talking about the moonshot and what that project looked like for the United States. But when we think about the next moonshots, we think they're going to look different, and we think they're going to be very global. Just a couple of words on how we think about innovation, because I was told you all might be interested in that before I deep dive into self-driving cars. So the Moonshot Factory is chaotic. It's not quite as colorful as this picture, though occasionally it can be. But I think one of the things you'll hear a lot, and it's even on one of the slides, is 10x thinking. In reality, 10x thinking is you have an aspiration that is 10x what it is today. But I think a lot of where you'll hear people who innovate today is really from 0 to 1. So if you can get one self-driving car driving around the streets of Mountain View unmanned, you have in fact innovated. And then the question is really, how do you scale that innovation? So we do a lot of defining the problem. In the case of the Loon project, I think you're all familiar that connectivity is a challenge. It's very expensive to have devices. The team then thought, well, we'll need solar and wind power involved. But then there's a problem, which is you have to get connectivity from that power to the places. Then you end up with some kind of tower. The team decided the problem was we can't use infrastructure. So how are we going to do this? We're going to use stratospheric balloons that will travel in the wind system through the stratosphere to provide connectivity. And that was how they defined the problem. They got stuck in the rat hole of the problem from before and decided we won't use those constraints. We also work in an extremely chaotic workspace. These are real pictures. It's messy, because innovation is really messy. And one of the things that's really exciting about my role is about 5 or 6 times a day, I walk through a garage full of people building sensors and cars. And that really changes how I think about my work all day long. When I first joined the project, someone asked me what I was going to be working on, and I said, well, I'm not, building lasers. And they took me quite seriously and said, oh, would you like to go into the laser room? And so you really are surrounded by the work. The mechanical engineers, the software engineers, the electrical engineers, really mash up of a lot of different disciplines in order to make this happen. And we also have just an attitude, as you saw from some of the things Rich Duvall said and Astro said, of, we can do this. And we're going to do, the classic brainstorm of yes and for at least 2/3 of our brainstorming and problem-solving sessions. Yes, at the end, we do a little bit of yes, but. But it's really important that you believe that you can, in fact, solve the problem, or else it's hard to motivate a team behind that problem. Here are some of the projects that we've talked publicly about. You may recognize one of our more recent projects, Project Wing, which would be the delivery of goods through drones. I'm also really excited about the glucose monitoring contact lens. That is a miniaturized chip and then also a filament that is less than the width of a human hair that can access the level of glucose through tears, which could really be game-changing for people suffering from diabetes. We've done a partnership with Novartis and their Alcon division to look at bringing that technology to market. They bring a lot of experience to the table. Vivek mentioned Google Glass and the idea of really rethinking the display and how your world can change if you could wear a computer. And I will talk a little bit more about Loon. And then, of course, the self-driving car project. What you see here is a prototype of the prototype that is still in development. You know it's not done because those headlights are stickers on the front, so you can't be driving that around. And then you see in the image rendering of what our ultimate prototype will look more like. We're fans of the little fez hat as opposed to the thing bolted on the top in terms of a design innovation. But a couple of things about why we did this. The team had made a tremendous amount of project essentially adapting commercially available vehicles. But in order to push our capabilities, we decided we needed to purpose-build a car. One of the reasons this car is exciting to us is it has a better field of view for all the sensors and the lasers. It's purposely designed so that there's really no blind spots for our sensors. It also has an onboard computing system that is rugged enough and built in the vehicle enough to withstand what you can imagine can be potholes and driving through the cities, yet have the processing power to make the real-time decisions that the vehicle makes. And ultimately, we thought it would push us to have no steering wheel and no pedals and controls. There's a button to stop and go. There's a button if you need to pull over. Yes, there's an emergency button. But that's really the innovation for us was, can we do this? Can we make this car without a steering wheel? So why did we do this? What was the problem we were solving? Driving is actually an extremely dangerous activity. Over 1.2 million people die every year in the world in an auto accident. Unfortunately, 93% of those are caused by human error. In the US, it's 33,000 people a year. That's the equivalent of one of these falling out of the sky every workday for an entire year. If you really thought about that, you would say this seems like a public health crisis, and we do think it. We do think it's a public health crisis. In fact, it's the leading cause of death for individuals aged 5 to 34. And the thinking on the lack of the steering wheel and the lack of the dependence on the human is that's how you solve that 93% of the errors. That's how you save lives. But there's some other benefits to the technology. I think you're all familiar with this. I experienced it this morning. There's a tremendous amount of congestion in this country, but also in many developing countries around the world. That has environmental impacts. It also has impacts on the quality of the people's lives in that congestion. In fact, in the US, it's about 100 minutes a day of transport time that could be ideally used for other things. Perhaps you're in the transport, but you're able to do other things. And parking is a huge pain in the ass. All right, I said ass. It's like 3 to 5 to 14 minutes to find a parking space in a city. And some cities that are highly congested, 30% of their inner city traffic is generated by people looking for parking. So shouldn't we just get rid of the having to look for parking part of that problem as opposed to building more parking? And so that's one of the things that we think is also interesting about this. And finally, driving for many people is the distraction. There are lots of things you'd like to be doing instead of driving. Some of these are actual photos people on our team took. But it is funny, but it's also very serious, because for some people, they don't actually have even the access to transportation or to being able to drive because they might have a disability or they might be too young. We get a lot of interest from people with teenage children who need to be ferried around. How can we make transportation more accessible and less of a distraction? This is not, in fact, a new idea. This is an ad from the 1950s. Apparently, in the road, there were magnets that were provided by, I believe it was the electricity companies of the day, that were going to allow our cars to just kind of route themselves through the city highways while you played dominoes, because that's the first thing I would have thought of. And unfortunately, though, even though this has been talked about for nearly a century, because it was actually talked about in the World Fair in 1939, there wasn't a lot of progress. So enter the US government and the DARPA program in the mid-2000s. They decided to boost the innovation, which our government sometimes does here in the US, by funding a contest. And a lot of academics from schools around the world participated. The first version of it was to drive 150 miles through the desert in Las Vegas, in Nevada. And the winner, which was not a winner, went 7.5 miles. So that wasn't so great. But the next year, the course was completed, and it was completed by a car named Stanley that came from the Stanford program. And in fact, the sort of early founder of the self-driving cars team at Google was the leader of that program, Sebastian Thrun. The year after that, they did the Urban Challenge, and they closed down an army base and then made it into more like a city, and the Carnegie Mellon team won that year. And one of the leaders of that project is now our head of the program at Google. And so that was great, but it was not really followed up on by a lot of people, except for perhaps Larry and Sergey, who thought, why don't I take these talented people who won these challenges and see if they can make this real? And the first thing we did is say, you know what, we're going to just see if we can drive 100,000 autonomous miles and a set of very challenging routes that if you can make the car do that, you could do anything. So if you're familiar with the Bay Area, you're looking at maps of things like driving down to Big Sur, driving up from Mountain View to San Francisco on El Camino, which is something like 238 traffic lights, which is just a hellacious drive, around Tahoe, really challenging, interesting routes, Lombard Street. And the team did accomplish that challenge. And then we started to really believe that, this experimentation and innovation could be real. So we moved from the Prius vehicles that we started with to modifying a Lexus vehicle. And this is just to orient you to the technology. On the top is the laser. The laser is used for our mapping, but it's also used to have 360-degree constant awareness of what's around the vehicle. In addition to the laser, we have radars positioned on the car that can read, for example, the speed of cars, several cars in front of you and behind you, and so in order to modulate your speed and positioning. There are cameras. The cameras see the traffic lights and signs and things like that. There are important processing capabilities. The computer is on board. The car is the computer. Positioning and orientation are critical for how we navigate, staying in a lane or moving from one lane to another lane. So that's a little bit of a crash course, but actually I'm going to show you some videos that give you a little more information. So there's 4 things that the car has to do before we see the video. So one, it has to know where it is in space and time, and we do our own custom maps in order to make sure the car knows where it is, because it's got a lot of work to do in the real moment, which is know, hey, what's around me? And so what you're seeing here, and I'm going to help you watch the video because it goes by quickly, those pink boxes are other vehicles. And you'll see bicycles in red and pedestrians in yellow. And so the car is seeing those in real time. Then it gets a little complicated. It has to predict what all of those objects around it might or might not do. And then make a decision. Do I speed up or slow down, turn right or left, stop? So it's really, as our head of software engineering said, it's really pretty easy. It just has to make a decision. So let's show this video. This, I think, is a great orientation to how the car works and some of the innovations we've had in recent years working on city streets. Should we roll the...
I'm Priscilla, one of the test drivers on the Google self-driving car project. Our team is responsible for keeping the cars and other people safe while on the road, and for providing feedback on how they perform in the real world. A big part of our job is to go out into the world and uncover all the potential scenarios that a car might encounter. Then we help the engineers teach the car how to best navigate each one. Here are some examples of situations that we regularly encounter on the streets of Mountain View, California. We've taught the vehicle to recognize and navigate through construction zones. Our sensors spot the orange signs and cones early to alert the car of the lane blockage ahead, and we can change lanes safely. You'll also notice the vehicle typically moves to keep a safe distance away from large obstacles, like this truck stopped on the side of the road. Now we're approaching a railroad crossing, which requires special care. Notice the red fence and railroad sign that appears to the computer as we approach the intersection. This means that we'll wait until the tracks are clear of other vehicles before proceeding. Our cars treat cyclists as a special category of moving object. Watch in this example, when the cyclist holds up his arm, our software detects the hand signal and predicts his movement into our lane. The car knows to continue yielding to the cyclist passing by, even when he changes his mind. Multiple times. We still have more work to do, but it's fun to see how many situations we can now handle smoothly and naturally. See you on the road.
So since we created that video, we've had some great additional innovations in handling what start to be for us edge case scenarios as you drive around the streets. One of the ones you have to really navigate, actually this is a great example, is sometimes if trucks stop right in the middle of the road. And the law says, you know, there's a double line, you can't go over that. So teaching the car the decisioning around when do I go around that truck, or can I go around that truck, or am I stuck behind FedEx? Seems like basic stuff, but it's like driver's ed, right, for the car. Back to our prototype, and I will share this video in a moment. The reasoning behind it is, again, to further our innovation. We've talked about making a couple hundred of these for learning. Our hope is that in the next couple of years we can do some public pilots with participants who can experience the technology. And one of the main learnings, I think, will be, you know, how does this feel for people? Do they trust this experience? Is this a better experience? I can't emphasize enough how important it is also that the safety aspect, as you saw from that video, that car is seeing much more than a human being can see and reacting more quickly. So what is that like to be in that vehicle that's doing that? And one of the things is, as you saw from those screens, all of our cars have a way of representing what it's seeing around you. And I'm really interested to see how consumers will accept and react to, okay, this is what the car sees. This is what I am experiencing in the moment. So before we bring these out to public pilots, we decided with our early prototype to do a test. And we literally, a bunch of us on the team, called some of our friends and neighbors and said, can you come to a closed course and experience this surprise? We didn't tell them what it was going to be. And in fact, my neighbors, literally next door, Walt and Linda, are in this video, and you'll find them, they're pretty funny. One of the people in the video is a guy called Steve Mann, who's the director of the Santa Clara Center for the Blind. And he is making a return appearance. If you look on YouTube, he was our first person from the public who was allowed to test a self-driving car a few years ago. So let's roll this video and see what our first riders thought.
Today, we have something extra special for you guys, and you guys will be some of the first people outside of our team and outside of Google to ever ride in it.
Yeah. All right, Connie, let's go. There's no steering wheel in the way.
It was a big decision for us to go and start building our purpose-built vehicles for this. And really, they're prototype vehicles. They were a chance for us to explore what does it really mean to have a self-driving vehicle. But in the small amount of time we've been working on it, we have functional prototypes, and that's exciting.
It's really cool. It was like really kind of a space age experience.
Oh, okay. Hooray. We're like queens.
You said, relax. You don't need to do nothing. It knows when it needs to stop. It knows when it needs to go.
It actually rides better than my own car.
Yes, sure.
What she really liked was that it slowed down before it went around a curve and then accelerated in the curve. She's always trying to get me to do it that way.
That's the way I learned in a high school driver's ed.
So if I had a self-driving car, I could spend more time hanging out with my kids or helping them with their homework, even just tending to them, finding out how their day was and not having to wait till you get home and have dinner and all that. So it'll be good.
Human feeling of it is very well engineered and it is very smooth. There's nothing that makes you feel the least bit threatened. It's impressive. I'm totally in love with this whole concept.
Our lives are made up of lots and lots of little things, and a lot of those little things for most people have to do with getting from place to place. And in order to connect and do things, be with people, go places that they need to go and do things. And so there's a big part of my life that's missing, and there's a big part of my life that a self-driving vehicle would bring back to me.
This is the first step for us, and it's really exciting to see the progress we've made. The opportunity for people to just move around and not worry about it, it's going to be incredibly empowering and incredibly powerful for people.
I love this!
So as you can see from the video, our first riders did seem to like it. And in fact, some of them had never met before this test and were hugging each other afterwards, because I do think they felt that this was a moment in history for them as well. So I'll just end with a couple of thoughts for all of you on, and we'll talk about Loon. I wanted to share one more video. Do I have time to share one more video? So Loon, these are high-pressure balloons. They're not the same as weather balloons. They can last for over 100 days. And the idea is you could, in fact, float them into the stratosphere and ring the Earth, ultimately, to provide the internet access. And, it's twice as high as an airplane flies. So people have asked me that, and I've said, don't worry, you're not going to be running into them. And really above weather and the kinds of conditions that you might experience traveling in an airplane. But what's most important about it, I think, is represented in this video, which I find personally inspiring, and it's also inspiring if you care about how the cloud could change people's lives, which some of you probably do. And so why don't we just roll this video on just similar to the first drive for the cars. This is sort of a first test for Loon in Brazil.
Quando a gente vem da zona urbana para cá, a gente não acha que o mundo deles seja pequeno, mas que a gente pode ampliar esse mundo dele através da tecnologia. Então não justifica um aluno no 6º, no 7º ano, já praticamente para o ensino médio, tendo que pegar o que tem e o que não tem para ir para Campo Maior, para poder ir para uma lan house, tendo que ir para debaixo de uma árvore. Isso não justifica.
O Brasil ainda tem muita gente desconectada. Tem aí para mais de 100 milhões de pessoas que ainda não têm acesso à internet e que estão em áreas remotas. O Loon vai ser muito útil trazendo as antenas voadoras que enxergam as áreas de cima e não tem toda a dificuldade de atravessar florestas ou atravessar montanhas.
Preciso incluir meus alunos nessa era digital, porque só assim eles vão crescer quanto estudante, quanto pessoa e poder trazer o crescimento para a própria comunidade dele.
Agora quando eu vou embora mesmo daqui da água fria.
So again, just being aware as a team and doing these videos is incredibly, it's obviously useful for audiences like this one, but it's incredibly important to us because if you forget about the users and the problem you're solving, the best thing to do is to involve them in the process. And I think that's something that some companies forget to do on occasion. So I will just end with this and say, what is your moonshot? What problem have you defined that you are going to solve? And do you have that multidisciplinary team that is operating without many constraints, that is ready to solve things for users like these? I certainly feel very motivated to be working on self-driving cars. Didn't bring you all demos, I apologize, but at least you got a flavor for it, and I thank you for your attention. Good luck with the rest of your day.
Thank you, Claire. It is just amazing to see things that were literally the topics of science fiction when I was a young man now being thought about in terms of how we use them to make the world a better place. I never thought I'd see the day when I was in college and watching movies like Total Recall that would be reality. Self-driving cars would be reality soon. So our next, I think I have to click here. Do I have to click here? Okay, hopefully I didn't click too early. Our next speaker, oh, there we are, thank you. Our next speaker is Urs, he was Google's 8th employee. He's been at Google over 15 years. His responsibilities include all of our technical infrastructure, and he's also the leader of our cloud business. I feel I should also add that he is my boss, and he is the most intelligent, thoughtful, urbane, witty, and dynamic person I have ever met. And so with that, without any further ado, Urs.
Thank you, Ben. Bonus for you. All right. Hi, everyone. It's great to be here with you this morning. Yes, I am Urs Hölzli, and I manage a team of engineers that designs, builds, and runs our technical infrastructure. So that's the data centers and services that run pretty much all our products. So from search to Gmail to G+, to YouTube, to Google Drive, that all runs on our infrastructure. But it's not just those products. I'm also responsible for, with Ben, for our internal infrastructure. So the tools and applications that we use to make our employees productive and to make it easy for them to collaborate, anywhere in the world. We're a very global company, obviously, and to keep our data and the data of our users safe and secure. So that's the job of infrastructure. And in the over 15 years that I've been responsible for this, we moved from sort of having a few servers in a co-location facility to having and running one of the really leading edge data center infrastructures in the world. And in fact, just last week, we announced our newest data center location in Europe, in the Netherlands. This will be our 4th location in Europe. And just like our others, it will be ultra efficient, using half the energy of a typical data center, using free cooling. And so together with the rest of our data centers and our network will enable us to provide high performance, high speed services to the entire world. Now, if one thing is clear, it's that the cloud and the disruption that the cloud brings with it isn't something that is a Google thing. Right? It's something that affects everyone. And I'm sure it's been affecting the way you think about technology in the past few years. Because many of the trends that shape consumer products, the ability to be on any device, in any location, right, really anywhere in the world, and collaborate, work together, would not be possible without the cloud behind the scenes actually connecting, enabling this connected experience. And so a number of people observed this quite a while ago, right, several years ago, and they were asking, should they move to the cloud as well? Right? Is this just for people like Google, or is this something for me? But today, I think this is not the question. The question is, how do you move to the cloud? I'm going to talk about that a little bit in the rest of this talk. We've talked to hundreds of companies, and there's many reasons why it's really now about how, not whether. So for some, it's cost. It's cheaper than an on-premise data center. It's simplicity, because they only pay for what they use. They don't have to plan. They don't have upfront capital expenditure, don't need to do capacity planning, and so on. It frees them from the complexity of running an infrastructure, especially global infrastructure. It gives their employees the flexibility to work from anywhere and collaborate seamlessly. And it even helps companies reduce their carbon footprint, because our data centers are probably more efficient than your data centers. But what we hear most is that companies want to be able to move more quickly. So companies want to create new products, get into new markets, get a competitive advantage much more quickly than they have been in the past. Now, the urgency to move quickly is clearer than ever. Let's look at the last 100 years. Just not too long ago, in 1957, the average company joining the S&P 500 was 75 years old. And today, companies get there in an average of 10 years. Right? It's really incredible the speed at which the growth accelerates today. And similarly, the same holds for products. Right? Here's a chart showing how long it took different products to get to 50 million users. There were 75 years between the invention of the phone and 50 million households actually having a phone. And only 35 days for Angry Birds to get there. And it's no coincidence that Angry Birds was built entirely in the public cloud. So one reason why they were able to grow so much faster is because they didn't actually have to build the infrastructure and the services needed to handle that growth. It was already there. So now many people who come to us tell us that this is how their world looks like. Right? Their developers, their IT teams really spend 80% of our time on what we call sort of fix and fiddle. Right? Installing software, upgrading it, fixing bugs, maintaining it, like doing small feature releases, and so on. Only 20% on actually doing the next thing, the innovative application that brings your business forward. Our mission is to change that. What we want to do is let you flip that picture. So that means that your teams would have 80% of their time to create the new applications, the new features, the change, the innovation that your business actually needs. And overall, our cloud platform, and in fact, our application platform, really our primary mission is to enable you to get to exactly that. Be that when you use Google Apps, and you don't have to worry about administering email servers and so on, or when you use our cloud platform, where you don't have to worry about load balancing or global distribution or backups. Right? And so that is our mission. And with the cloud, this power can be distributed throughout your organization. So central IT is not an impediment to change, but actually the ultimate enabler of that change for all the teams throughout your company. So I want to walk you through 3 examples of exactly how this is happening today. First example is from Coca-Cola. In the lead up to this year's World Cup, they wanted to engage with their users. And so they wanted to create an application that allowed users to submit photos. And what you may not see in this picture is that this huge flag is composed of over 233,000 images that were picked from over 3 million images submitted by users in 200 countries across the world. Now, Coca-Cola, with their partner CI&T, had only a few weeks to get this application up and running. So in just a few weeks, they built their entire platform on top of the Google Cloud Platform. They used App Engine to handle the interactive parts, the uploading, and so on. The images were stored in cloud storage. The Compute Engine used the image manipulations that were needed to compose all of this together. And so even as millions of images were uploaded, the system didn't slow down because App Engine and Compute Engine are able to handle this load very easily. And so with a very small team, Coca-Cola could create a compelling application in just a few weeks and get an ambitious project off the ground and really execute it flawlessly as a wind-up to, by the way, a great World Cup. I hope many of you watched it as well. It was one of my favorite World Cups, actually, because few games were boring and many games were as exciting as any game I've seen. So with that, the second example, Snapchat. You may have heard of them. If you haven't heard of them, your kids have heard of them. And in fact, it's among the top 10 most downloaded applications on both Android and iOS. So incredibly popular application. But it started as a class project at Stanford. Two people wanted to create a new form of exchanging images. And from the beginning, they did it on Google App Engine. They launched in 2011, and just 2 years later, they had tens of millions of users that were sharing hundreds of millions of pictures every day. And if you just think, before cloud computing, a story like that would have been completely unthinkable, right? It's like truly unthinkable, right? You cannot get to tens of millions of users with 6 developers is what they had in 2 years. Just not possible. But with the Google Cloud Platform, that wasn't just possible, but it was something that they are still doing and they're still growing. What made it possible is that they could really focus on the application they wanted to build. They didn't have to worry about scalability. They didn't have to worry about international usage. They didn't have to worry about network provisioning. They didn't have to worry about storage. All of that heavy lifting behind the scenes is done by us. And so it's not just about scale, but it's also about agility. So they can push out a new version of their software or add a new feature while millions of users are actually using their application that very moment. Right? It's not an easy task, but in the Google Cloud Platform, actually it becomes a fairly straightforward task. The third company I want to talk about is on the opposite spectrum, few users that do very important work with it. Workiva was also a startup, also started in a basement in Iowa this time. And it's one of the co-founders, Dan Murray, had seen how difficult it was to assemble all the pieces needed for an SEC filing. And he set out with his partner to change that. And today, Workiva handles the financial reporting of over 60% of the Fortune, of the S&P 500 companies, including Google's, including probably many of yours. And they did that in just a few years. Well, how did they do it? From the beginning, they used App Engine. And so at the very beginning, they didn't have to worry about data centers, capital expenditures, system administrators, operations teams, and so on. They could really focus with a small team of developers on creating the best experience for financial filings. And just a few years later, they were able to capture 60% of that market. Because they were able to move fast, they were able to worry about the things that were really important for their product to succeed and not worry about anything else. Now, the Google Cloud Platform is used by thousands of companies and has all the components that you would expect from a platform. So you can build pretty much any application that your business needs. What's unique about the Google Cloud Platform is that it enables you to avoid some of the forced choices that you have to make in other trade-offs. So for example, you don't have to choose between writing an application that scales and writing an application quickly. So for example, for Snapchat, flash crowds are not a problem, or for Workiva, where their traffic is very uneven across the year because government filing deadlines cause lots of companies to file at the same time. So despite that very irregular pattern, they don't have to worry about the spikes. They don't have idle servers when it's a less busy time. Things just work. Similarly, you have the flexibility. You don't have to choose between infrastructure as a service, compute engine, or a platform as a service app engine. You can get the best of both worlds and combine them just as you want. And then finally, with big data, you don't have to choose between a very, very powerful infrastructure that allows you to query petabytes in real time and a simple-to-use system that lets you basically type SQL queries against that data. Right? You can get both at the same time. And all of that, of course, is built on world-class infrastructure. Very proud of the team that we built and the infrastructure that we built. Because of our scale and also the 15 years of experience, I think we're doing it more efficiently, more cost-effectively, and more environmentally sensitive than anyone else. Right? For example, we're the only cloud company that has been carbon neutral since 2007 and whose data centers are ISO 14000 certified. I'm very proud of that. And so you get to benefit from moving from all of that work for your infrastructure as well on the Google Cloud Platform. Now, it's not just about innovation, the cloud. I mean, yes, it is, but it is also about cost. So let's look at that for a second. Since the birth of public cloud computing, the average price has declined by about 8% annually on average. And that's great, because in IT budgets, they're not going up every year, so getting something back is a good thing. However, if you look at the underlying trend of the hardware, that hardware has, in fact, decayed much faster. Because Moore's law says that roughly every 18 months, you should be getting twice the compute or storage capacity than you could. And while the two curves are not exactly the same, because the cost of running an infrastructure isn't just the cost of hardware. Right? There's also energy, people, and so on, and they don't quite scale with Moore's law. So you would expect some gap to exist, but it's not reasonable for that gap to widen over time. Right? In fact, you would expect the gap to narrow over time, because as the cloud scales, all the people costs and so on should also see the efficiencies of scale. And so last March, we reset the price the economics of cloud, and brought these curves much closer together. We lowered the price of compute by about a third, the price of storage by more than half, and the price of data analytics by 85%. And not only did we lower prices, we also introduced much more user-friendly pricing models. So these prices are just the on-demand prices. But if you actually have a steady workload, then sustained use discounts kick in, and they give you the economics of reserved instance pricing without the upfront cost, without yearly contracts, without committing to a specific machine type, and without having to plan your utilization a year or two ahead of time. Right? It's an automatic discount that you get, and it's a pure pay-per-use model. And we made these changes even more user-friendly by billing per minute rather than per hour. So if you have a 64-minute compute job, you're going to get billed for 64 minutes and not for 120 minutes. And we did all of that because we think that it aligns with the original promise of cloud. Right? The original promise of cloud is pay as you go and get world-class infrastructure with no complexity. Right? It shouldn't feel like you're dealing with a complicated Byzantine pricing scheme that's kind of extracting maximum value for you. It should be, okay, how many minutes did you use? This is how much you pay. Right? And if next month you use something else, then you pay a different amount, but it's very, very predictable. Right? So that's what we did. But finally, we didn't just want to do a one-time price change. We actually made a commitment to an ongoing following to Moore's law. Right? So we commit to passing on the savings that we see to you, right, whenever we get them. And in fact, my team is working every day to reduce the cost of compute and make it more efficient. Because Google, we ourselves, we are a huge consumer of compute. And so it really matters for us that we can keep on Moore's law and actually enable our applications to consume more without actually paying more. And so today I'm happy to do the next step of this, because we're dropping the price of compute engine by another 10%, really passing on the savings that have accumulated to us since last spring. That price drop is a straight across the board price drop, so it's available. It applies immediately, and it applies to all instance types in all regions. So basically, no exceptions. And this won't be the last one, because really our promise is we're going to stay on Moore's law. So if we see improvements, if we manage to squeeze out more efficiency, if we get better pricing, if we get better performance, you're going to see that in your bill in a relatively short amount of time. So we're going to follow that curve. Now, I don't want to end this presentation on cost, because obviously cloud is about economics. So yes, right, you can save infrastructure costs, you can save service costs, you can benefit from not having to do planning, from being able to peak, from not having idle servers. All of these things are true. But as I talked about before, perhaps the bigger benefit to you is agility. Right? So our mission really is to let your business run at the speed of Google, so that you can innovate as quickly without needing to worry about the hassles that come with having an infrastructure. And we can worry about that. We've worked 15 years to be very good at that, and so I can assure you that you're going to get a great service from that. So with that, thank you very much for being here, and I look forward to the Q&A with Tim O'Reilly after the break. Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks, Urs. Don't go yet, because I had a question I wanted to ask. First of all, fantastic. Much appreciated that you could be here today and share that with us. So for the viewers, I realize, and you and I were talking about this a little bit earlier, I realize we bring concepts like this onto the stage, have the leaders of these efforts address us, and at times it can seem like these are discrete efforts on their own. But there's an awful lot of connection that goes into the legacy of the cloud, and in all the interesting things that we see going on, cloud included, but there are a lot of things that happen, like Claire just talked about, the self-driving cars and Loon, et cetera. Cloud is a big part of that. I thought maybe you'd share a little bit of the history that you're intimately familiar with, being employee number 8, that maybe people would find interesting.
Yeah, so one of the reasons actually why we've done so much work is because we really had to. Right? So we had a large compute problem even 15 years ago. So web search is actually a very expensive operation. You search through, million at the time, tens of millions, now, hundreds of billions of web pages in basically real time. And that forced us to really create technology and services that made it easier for our developers to do ambitious applications without having to get down to the bare metal and worry about all these details. And so if you look at cloud computing today, actually many of the concepts that are in there and the things that you hear about, so for example, MapReduce / Hadoop, distributed file systems, NoSQL, SDN, right? These were all things that we introduced in our data centers years before anyone did. And it's not because we somehow were, we saw the future earlier, right? We were forced to deal with those problems because we had a search or a Gmail, and they just needed to store data without having to worry about the scale of the data, and so on and so on. And so these were really all the things that pushed us to understand what makes it hard for applications writers to create big global applications and then try and solve that in a way that accrues to many Google products at the same time. And so at the same time, we benefited from the fact that all the builds were coming to me in the end. And so we saw that, for example, it wasn't just about the CapEx, right? It's also about the OpEx. It's about the power bill. So we saw that, wow, our power bill is twice as high as it should be. Why is that? And that led us to go and say, we got to build our own data centers that are twice as efficient, because it's possible and it's profitable to do that, right? And so it wasn't that we dreamed that out on a desk. This really happened because as we were operating, as we were actually using the cloud, we just encountered all these problems. And because we were at scale earlier than many others, that really led us to solve those problems much earlier. And that's why today, someone like Loon really doesn't have a big team dealing with data analytics or something like that. They can just use our platform, and they're basically done with it, right? They can focus on radio spectrums and computing paths and sort of things like that, right? They can hook into maps to visualize where the balloons are going, right? They use docs to collaborate, et cetera, et cetera. So really, actually, those are all things that we basically, that bothered us because we couldn't do them. And over the years, we created the systems to solve them. Right?
But like you said, small teams properly equipped, and like Claire said, focused on the problems that mattered, right?
Exactly, right? And to me, that's the biggest, I mean, all of the examples I mentioned, to me, are really incredible in the sense that just having an application that reaches 1 million users was basically unthinkable 15 years ago, right? You just couldn't do it. Or only AOL could do it, basically, right? So one company in the world could do it. And today, someone in their garage or in their bedroom can do it, right? And that's because the whole infrastructure behind it is now available as a service. And that can benefit your business too, obviously.
Appreciate that. Thank you. One more question. So as you just pointed out, before it took large companies with the resources to be able to innovate, these days, smaller companies are doing it, undoubtedly leveraging the investments that have been made, et cetera. But in your mind, as the chief of this architecture and this initiative, et cetera, in cloud, how do you differentiate between the requirements of the small companies and the requirements of the large? And that these days, it seems it is no longer necessarily an aspiration of every company to be a big company.
That's right. I actually think these requirements are converging, and I'll give you one example. So it used to be that the common wisdom was that if you're building for the enterprise, then security and compliance were really top. And if you do something consumer, it doesn't really matter that much, not very high on your list, right? That is totally not true today. So a consumer using Gmail actually has the same expectations about security, privacy, compliance than an enterprise user, and to some extent has higher expectations because they don't fully understand sort of the problem. And so then the infrastructure that you need is really converging, right? Today, our Gmail storage backend and so on uses the same kind of encryption that you would use in your enterprise, right? The same kind of audit trails and so on are there. Because we have to protect our users, we have to make sure that they trust us that access to their email is strictly controlled and everything runs in a secure way, right? So just 10 years ago, those two were very far apart. Now they're much closer. Same thing with mobile, right? Mobile initially was something that you sort of privately used, but as a company, it didn't really have much of a purpose. Now, bring your own device, right, et cetera, right? On-device encryption, right? Android L is going to have encryption in consumer devices, right? By default, everywhere. We had one-time passwords on consumer accounts for, 5 years, right? We have tens of millions of users using that, right? So again, the consumer and the enterprise space are actually really emerging. And nowadays, innovation starts often in the consumer sector because the opportunity is so large, right? Billions of devices and so on and so on. And then kind of drifts into the enterprise space. And so by having a platform that serves both consumer users and enterprise users, we hope actually that we can enable both sides to benefit sort of from the strength of each other and to enable companies to really move as quickly as sort of the consumer market needs. Because many of you have consumers as your end customers, and so the consumer really expects you to move as quickly as sort of their favorite, as the Snapchats of the world.
So facilitating agility without sacrificing the requirements.
Exactly, and I really think the two are more and more the same, right? There isn't really two separate ITs, consumer IT, so to speak, and enterprise IT. The two are rapidly converging.
Fantastic. Thank you, Urs.
All right.
Much
Thank you.
appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Urs Hutzli. All right. Well, I hope everybody enjoyed that. Again, the thoughts that get shared are here to engender the conversation, right? And to provoke us into thinking about things differently. And the next couple speakers we're going to hear from, Sundar Pichai and Clay Bavor, are going to do a little bit more of that. But first, we're going to see a video that's going to roll, and then I'll get out of the way. So please welcome the video and then Sundar Pichai and Clay Bavor. Thank you.
One will change the way we think. One will start a movement.
Another one, a craze.
One will inspire another, which will inspire another, which will inspire them all.
One will deliver a speech that unites a country.
Another will bring a family together.
One will shoot a video that millions will see.
While one will send the most beautiful love letter ever written.
One will make us laugh.
One will make us cry.
One will make us believe in the potential of everyone.
Video. Hello. This is the biggest couch I've ever seen. Wow.
Longest couch, at least, yeah.
At least the longest, yeah. Good morning. It's great to be here. My name is Clay Bavor, and I'm responsible for product management and design for Google Apps, so Gmail, Drive, Docs, and so on. Sundar is my boss, and so this is actually an interesting opportunity for me to get to just ask him whatever I want for 25 minutes, so I'm going to take advantage of that. And Sundar, I guess, to me, he needs no introduction. Sundar is responsible for Android. He helped build Chrome. And also is responsible for apps. For the next 25 minutes, I get to ask you whatever I want.
There you go.
Here we go. So I actually, I wanted to start with a really personal, really important question, which is Star Wars or Star Trek?
Ooh. It's kind of a silly, interesting story. When I first came to the US, I was with a bunch of friends. This was in grad school, and they asked me, have you seen it? And I'd seen neither. They were so shocked I hadn't seen it, they made me watch the whole trilogy of Star Wars in one day. So I remember staying up late in the night and watching through it. So I would pick Star Wars. Both are great, though. Helps me a lot as I do the current set of stuff I work on. So.
Yeah, there's a fair amount of institutional Star Wars knowledge, so it's probably a good call. It's a group of CIOs here. I speak with a lot of CIOs, and I know one of the questions that comes up all the time is, if you look at kind of Google's heritage, it started as a consumer products company with search, and I think many see that as kind of the DNA of the company. And so why, for Google, are businesses, why is enterprise important, and how do you think about that?
It's interesting, even before we had this notion of doing something for work, for businesses, early on, I remember, I joined Google around the time we were working on Gmail and about to announce Gmail. People forget Gmail was one of, after search, it was one of the main applications we worked on. So early on at Google, both Larry and Sergey and Eric at the time had this notion that productivity was a big, big part of our goal. And so we always thought of us using technology to solve problems, and especially around information. Productivity was something we just always observed. I remember early conversations that people spend a lot of time at work, and at least as a part of your waking time, it's the thing you do the most. And so there was always this notion for our products to be useful. They need to really help people with productivity, being productive, around communication, around productivity, and so on. So it's been in this kind of founding DNA. And I think before we internalized it as we were building something for businesses, we started focusing on productivity. I think that started us on this journey. And I think it still runs today. I think everything we do, I just don't see a world, for example, if you look at computing platforms like Android and Chrome, I think gone are those days. I mean, for a computing platform to really work, it needs to work across your life. And so thinking about all the hours you spend at work is a natural part of what we do. And so I don't think we made this conscious decision saying, we should care about work as much as it's in the founding goal of like how we think about products. Productivity is a big part of what we do, and hence serving businesses. I think for us it's a natural evolution. And over time, if anything, it's become more and more integral of how we think about things.
So you talked about how kind of the journey into this space started with apps like Gmail, and I think we announced that like April 1st, 2004, people thought it was a joke, and it wasn't, and then it was Gmail for your domain and so on, and kind of there's been the arc of apps over the last 6-7 years. I guess, where do you see us being right now, and what's on the horizon?
I mean, the evolution on apps has been pretty big for us. It started with Gmail, we've had Calendar, and then we invested a lot in our Doc suite of editors. And if you look at all these products, I mean, Gmail has over 750 million users. It's growing fast. It's on track to be a billion user product. When you look at our Doc suite, we have invested a lot over time. We acquired Quick Office, and now they're all built into Docs. So we truly care about getting them to work, across platforms, online and offline, right? And have full compatibility with Office in terms of being able to interact with Office files seamlessly. And it's been a constant journey of making the products better. I feel like we are 25% of the way, right? And so, when I look at it, how much we are investing in that area, that's incredibly exciting for me as well. Google Drive, which we started much later, but we announced Google Drive for Work. We also announced Drive for EDU. The traction in Drive alone this year has been amazing. We've more than doubled users. As of today, I mean, this is something new we are announcing, but we are at 240 million users. These are active users of Drive. And on mobile alone, we have our growth this year on mobile for Drive is around 350% year on year. And so the product is exploding. So for us, when we see how people are adopting these suite of products, there is a big shift underway. So words like mobile first, cloud first, it's easy to talk about them, but for us, these products are built cloud first, inherently. It's not an afterthought for things like Docs, right? That's the first lines of code which were written in something like Google Docs. No one wrote a line saying cloud first. It is a cloud application, right? And so, from the ground up, I think these are set up to transition to the future. So I'm very excited about these as well. So, all these are, and for us, especially as we have invested a lot more to make it work for companies like you, we have added, a lot more controls. If I look at Drive for Work, the security that's gone into it, the controls we expose it, the integrations with things like Vault, et cetera, right? And so I think it's being thoughtfully evolved for companies. So I'm very excited about our app suite and the scale at which it's getting adopted. Everywhere, to me, is exciting to see. All over, too. We see it getting adopted geographically, everywhere, around the world. Places where I don't expect people to be using Google Apps. I'm constantly surprised when I travel. And it's getting adopted across, across work, across education, across consumers as well.
So I spend my days obviously thinking about apps. What's going on in Chrome land and Android and hardware? And you have a lot of things kind of on the stove. What's happening? What's interesting?
The thing which has been exciting is I talked about apps, but if you think about the whole stack, I think now for the first time, we're beginning to address the whole solution space. And obviously, I talked about apps. It's not just our applications. How do you deploy third-party applications? How do you deploy your own applications? And what Urs talked about with cloud, is a big part of it as well. And I'm really excited because I've literally seen how much we are shifting towards serving external customers with our cloud solution. We've always run great cloud applications. I can almost count 7 to 8 1 billion user applications like Search, Maps, YouTube, et cetera, Gmail. We run at scale. We've done it for many years. I'm sure you don't easily recall any of these going down, and we keep them very secure, right? And so it's been in our DNA, but now to take that and bring it outside and make a concerted effort doing so, I think is a big part of the puzzle. And finally, underlying all this is the computing platforms, and both Android and Chrome. And for both of them, we have a very explicit, very thoughtful effort to bring them and make them work well for companies. And with Chrome, we are already doing it with Chromebooks. The momentum there has been incredible to see, especially around, we started getting a lot of traction in EDU. To, as far as we can see, I think it's the largest selling device in EDU in the US. And we are probably approaching 50% share very soon across, and this has been in the last 18 months. I think maybe 18 months ago, our share was probably sub 5%, and we are probably approaching close to 50%. So it's been a big shift underway, and it's really set up to be very secure, very easy to deploy and manage at scale. I think for many companies, it can bring computing to parts of organization which doesn't have computing today. And then the big thing which we're working on is bringing Android for work. And Android for work and Google Play for work. It's an oxymoron to call it Google Play for work, but but the combination of Android and the ecosystem of apps, bringing that to work is, it's an important project. We are taking our time because we want to be thoughtful again on security and the controls we bring, and we want to make sure it's as easy to deploy a lot of Android devices in your organization, keep them secure, how you manage your data, corporate data away from personal data, how do you isolate it, how do you give a good user experience on top of it. These are all the things we are thinking thoughtfully. But to me, once we do that, the combination of what we are bringing, there's a big shift in computing underway. Big shift, and I can feel it. This is what I work on. I can feel how, even working on these things, I feel how fast the stuff is shifting underneath my feet, and so I feel the momentum there. And so bringing that to companies, I think it's one of the most important things we're doing.
You talked a lot about security in the context of Android work. Maybe can you go one level deeper on how we think about security? And I think if I'm channeling what's on the minds of this group and the folks on the live stream, it's all right, controlling my devices, controlling my data, keeping it secure is the most important thing for me. And so how do we think about security, and what do we do?
Look, the best way I can answer this question is Google itself as a company. We use most of our own products, right? And Google, is state of the art in terms of security. We have close to 500 engineers working on keeping Google secure alone, building secure, making sure everything just works. And because we are obviously a target, we run several large applications with very important user data, and we are the kind of threat vectors we see. I've been in briefings, and the set of stuff we see, it'll genuinely surprise people. The scale at which, and so we work very hard. So security is deep in our culture. Everything we do, most of our products, all our important products use HTTPS. In fact, we encrypt data between our data centers. Things like Drive for Work, we encrypt the data at rest. And so, we deeply care about security to an extent. I think, I would like to think, based on, I've worked at other places too, it's state of the art, and our goal is to make sure as we design our security solutions and use our products, we bring it outside when we take these products externally and offer it to other companies as well. I think people talk about it a lot. I look at, for example, when we build Chrome OS, etc., the extent to which we made these products secure. We run contests outside. We pay people lots of money to come attack our products, pawn to own, etc. We run these challenges, and we do very well in these. And so it's, security is deeply in our culture of how we build. Good computer science involves thinking about security from the ground up. And so for us, it's a big part of what we do. And we just obviously cannot afford as Google, a single instance where customer data is, our user data is compromised. It's just unacceptable to us. And I think that the same is true for all of you as well. Your customer data, your data within your company, these are all sacrosanct, we think. And so, So it's fundamentally built in the design of everything we do.
One of the things I love about working at Google is kind of the constant stream of interesting things that emerge from the Googleplex, Google Now and Chromecast and so on. And I have some visibility into those, Cardboard and so on. But I'm wondering if you could give us and this group kind of a sense for some of the things, in the Google Lab, some of the things on the horizon that are bubbling that you're most excited about. And I think importantly, how some of those might be translated to use in businesses and enterprise.
Yeah, no, I think that excites me. So we drive, within Google, there is a lot of focus on innovation and building the next set of important things. And increasingly, I think, because we have now seen a pattern that almost everything, when we try to innovate, we pull off some things, we fail, but we constantly strive to make sure we are pushing the boundary. And for me, I've seen a pattern over time now that, if we succeed in innovating and bringing something, almost always it translates to the workplace as well, everything we do. So for example, when I look at some of the newer things we are doing, when I look at how useful Google Now is for me, I can only imagine if I translate something like Google Now into the workplace, I can imagine how useful it can be. I can imagine, I face this all the time where, I'm in meetings talking to people. I wish as I walk into the meeting, I'm shuttling, my calendar is booked back to back. I wish when I walk in and talk to someone, Google Now tells me, okay, these are the last conversations you've had with this person, and gives me contextual information that's relevant.
I'm imagining our future one-on-ones.
There you go. But I think to me, when I think about these use cases, they are actually meaningful to me. I look at how Google Now tells me, hey, I walk to the airport and my boarding pass is there waiting for me. And I think about all those use cases for people within companies, for people in the sales force as they go talk to customers, et cetera. These are incredibly powerful use cases. So everything we do, I think, will apply. We are doing a lot of work around, around wearables. I constantly keep trying new things, and we're pushing the boundaries. For me, when I look at Android Wear, we've just taken the journey no different from how we took with Android when we launched the G1 phone many years ago. So we are in our first versions of these things. I look at where we will be next year, and innovation is pretty amazing. And so for me, translating that to companies is going to be exciting. Just to give an example of, we are thinking a lot about communication, how people communicate. I look at how much people travel within the context of companies, and it's very important today, absolutely, because nothing even remotely comes close to the experience of you actually traveling and meeting the people you need to. But I think technology can play a much, much bigger role. Be it what we are doing, be it when you hear things about VR, et cetera. For us, we work on a lot of these things. I see a lot of ideas. I can't help but think, a few years from now, how people in companies communicate and talk to each other, how real and how immersive you can make that. And I think it will happen. It'll be real, and it'll transform how people actually work together. We experiment with some of these internally, and it's game changing. And all this brings back to me, as to why it is very important. I think, as companies, you have to be thoughtful about how you evolve your internal architecture. But the world is shifting so fast, and there's so many innovations coming down on this side. I think getting it ready and moving to a truly, cloud-first, mobile-first architecture, et cetera, is going to be very, very important.
We've talked about devices and Android and Chrome and apps and wearables and communication and so on. And I think even from inside Google, it's sometimes hard to keep track of kind of everything that's going on. And as someone looking to work with Google on technology and bringing Google technology into their business, I think it can appear kind of daunting to figure out how to even get started. And in particular, some of the changes involved, are big. So I guess, how would you advise folks in this room wanting to get started with something, where to start? Like, how to engage with Google, where to look, and what to do to kind of dip a toe in the water?
Look, in my conversations with many of you, I think it's a question everyone grapples with, because your companies are doing very, very important things. You have day-to-day businesses to run, and so driving a shift on IT is very hard. But to my earlier point, I think it's incredibly important. I think over time it becomes a competitive advantage because, in the end, your external interactions and customers and people you're dealing with on their personal lives are moving on these technologies, and so I think it's almost companies to be more in touch with what's happening in the outside world. There's an imperative to shift and keep up with the times too. So I think it's a balance. The most successful things we have seen, even very large companies, increasingly we are serving many, many large companies. There are more companies we are set to announce in the next few weeks, and these are companies, even myself, I didn't think would be on this path to transitioning to things like Google Apps at the pace at which they are doing. And a lot of them started by identifying important subsets of their organization, which they figured out a way to get this journey started, right? And it's tough to take your entire company and decide to move email, et cetera, and it has a lot of implications. People do it, but I think depending on which stage of where your company is, figuring out portions of the company to get on, be it we have people deploying apps in pilot ways. People deploying Chromebooks that way, and in fact, even there are Android for work as we bring it. I think it's a great opportunity for many people to deploy it, and identify parts of the organization which can get on these new technologies, and that way everyone can learn. And so we are increasingly seeing that a lot, and I think it's a good way to bootstrap and get it started. But the thing though I would say is, for me, the question I guess a lot of grapple. Obviously, Microsoft is a very, very important player. They're very strong, and I think they're strong and they're deeply entrenched. We face it all the time, and so they've been at it a lot longer than us. They probably speak the language much better than we do. We are learning as we go along. But we are deeply committed. We are running our company this way internally, and we are now at this point where we are serving companies of all scales and sizes globally. And so we are well past the hump of where we are in terms of the kinds of companies we are serving, multi-billion-dollar companies today, and our commitment gets deeper every day. I talked about all the products and services we are bringing along. And I do think the choice couldn't be, I think it's a very, very important shift in computing underway. And, in the end, Microsoft has a strategy which is fundamentally rooted on a thick client desktop strategy, which they are, talking all the right languages, but underneath it, they have to shift their platforms to actually reflect that. I think, they're trying hard to do that, We come from a different place, For us, as I said earlier, things like cloud, et cetera. For us, there's nothing called cloud first internally because we wrote these things to be cloud applications, and from the ground up. And Android is the most successful mobile platform out there, right? And so, for us, internalizing a mobile first OS is not an afterthought. It's not that we think about how to bring Windows to mobile. Android is a mobile OS. From the ground up, it was built for mobile. And increasingly what mobile is, I think will span beyond phones. I'm beginning to use it, and I can see the power of it. So the shift, by the time Microsoft figures out how to transition their stuff to work on phones, I think the world will move a step further. And this is how technology works. So I think it's one of computing shifts are profound. They take time, but the shift is definite, real. There's no going back as far as I can see. And so I think it's important for companies to figure out how to drive this shift.
Many more questions I would like to ask you, but we're out of time. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you all. Hope to see you more.
Thanks, Sundar. I appreciate it. Thanks, Clay. Much appreciated. Thanks. All right. Thanks to Sundar and Clay for sharing with us their thoughts around how they're bringing innovative products to market. It's in the context of Google's products, but as you heard, they're echoing the same sentiments that you heard from other speakers. How do you actually isolate and identify the problems that matter? What are the functions you're actually trying to provide to organizations? And then how do you leverage the benefits in terms of resources that you have to bring meaningful solutions? And how can you do that in an iterative and daring fashion while not compromising on certain things that you hold paramount, like security, et cetera? So it's always great to hear how, you know, they don't just think about technology for technology's sake. They're thinking about it in terms that many of us in the audience and the extended audience would appreciate. How do you actually improve deeper and accelerated interaction amongst humans? How do you take into account the complexities of travel or presence awareness, et cetera? You know, this is what is, I think, fantastic to consider. And it's a reminder to all of us as we look at what we're trying to solve in our day-to-day lives, you know, how do you flip those teams? How do you get yourself focused on the 80% that matters and not constrain yourself, right, with what you think is the 80% that matters today, but should be the 20%, because it's not nearly as important as what's going to be in the future. So I want to thank all the speakers in our first session. The live stream audience gets to continue with your content immediately following. And for the rest of us, we get to deal with the realities of gravity, time, and the physical space. 20-minute break, and then we'll rejoin you here in this room. Thank you very much.